Finally, right? Okay.
Finally.
Um,
Ain't that what said? Finally.
right. So, obviously, this is episode 6, right? So, I'm excited about this episode. Everybody, thanks for being patient with us with the technical difficulties we had quickly. Um, so, on today's episode, Paris and I are talking about life after college football, right? What are you supposed to do when you don't make it to the NFL or you have a short lived NFL career because of an injury or mental health reasons or whatever that may be? We're also going to get into talking about the WNBA's recent spike in viewership and how they're getting so much support. And we're also going to be talking about the new Olympic sports that will be added to the 2028 games. And then, of course, last but not least, Reebok's new leadership and how that just represents Black excellence all across the board. So let's dig right into it. So we were talking about what happens when football players don't make it to the NFL. What can they do? What's their plan B? Especially if it's due to an injury, we know that automatically that's hard to deal with mentally, right? Any type of injury in any sport at a collegiate level. But what are some of the options that you have, right? I think one of the first options is actually finishing school and getting your degree.
Right.
Okay. Get your degree in something that you're passionate about. It doesn't even have to be sports related, you know? Why would you, if you think about it this way, right? Why would you major in something that reminds you of a sport that you can't play, right? You could go that route. But if not, you can major in something that's sports related. It's important for athletes to finish their degrees. Don't just rush to get drafted to the NFL. I know if the opportunity seizes itself, a lot of people are going to tell you to go for it. You may want to go for it as well because it's life changing. But finish your degree. You know what I'm saying? If you have to be real with yourself, you know that, okay, if you're really going to get drafted or not, your coaches are going to tell you. Your team is going to tell you. You can ask your coach. You know what I'm saying? Even though college coaches know that's what you're working towards, ultimately, you have to be real with yourself. And if you know that you're not about to get drafted to the NFL, if you're not going to make it, or if you got injured and you don't know if it's a good idea, you're thinking about your livelihood, then you should go ahead and consider finishing your degree. Look at all the broadcasting jobs.
I think even if you do get drafted to the NFL, I believe it's important to still somewhat really get all that you can in terms of your college education and the education that you do receive in college.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you do make it to the NFL and you do have such an illustrious career, what are you going to do after?
Right.
You may be able to live off of as much money as you bank, from your career.
Mm-hmm.
And even more, I think being a student athlete in college, it's just really important to find yourself and find what you're interested in, find your passions. I wouldn't even suggest maybe majoring in anything sports related, but major in something that you're passionate about. And if you don't know, then use that time in college, when you're not, training for your respective sport. Use that time that you can to really find out what you love to do. I know initially going into college, I thought I wanted to, major in something related to my sport, and I quickly realized I didn't. And to this day, I'm not even involved with gymnastics as much as people may think, because
Mm-hmm.
spending time and really investing all my time and energy into the sport that in many ways didn't give back to me
Mm-hmm.
after I was done with it. I needed, I had to face the facts and realize, well, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is
Mm-hmm.
it that I can put my time into that's going to put back into me? And I think that is something that a lot of student athletes really should be taught, while they're in school.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you do go to your college, but as soon as you step onto that campus, it's sports, 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 training this, training that, because your goal is to win championships. But unfortunately, not everyone in their athletic career is going to pursue their sport after college. And so then they're faced with the, well, what's next? And, being an Ohio State alum yourself, Cardale Jones, infamous famously
Yeah.
said, I don't go to school to," he said, "but I don't," he said, "I go to school to play football."
Hmm.
Remember that tweet he said?
Yeah.
I can't. He said, "We don't play school." Something along the lines. He said,
Hmm.
but in other words, he made a reference that, as a scholarship athlete, he didn't go to college for school, but he went for football and to make it to the NFL.
Hmm.
But then he also realized that that dream didn't turn out, in the same way that he may have hoped. And what did he have to lean back on?
Hmm.
School.
Yeah.
Many athletes do. And even, I think of people like Shaquille O'Neal,
Hmm.
where he had such an amazing NBA career, but a lot of what he's doing today, a lot of his businesses, his entrepreneurship, it came after his NBA career. In other
Hmm.
words, he played in the NBA. He had such an amazing career, but look at his life now. You know,
Yeah.
how many years
Hmm.
has he been out of the NBA?
Right.
And
Yeah.
you think
For you.
about it, when you think about it, lived he lived more outside of the NBA than he did in the NBA. So with that being said, what is he banking on?
Hmm.
You, you have to life keeps going, and you have to learn how to keep going along with life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I know Shaquille O'Neal, he's paid for a lot of his friends' education to go back to school. So he's definitely an advocate for getting your education when you're in these spaces as a collegiate athlete. You know what I'm saying? Um, a lot of collegiate athletes, though, they are the ones in their family that are under that immense pressure to make it, right? So just think, right? You have siblings, you may have cousins, you may have your grandmother, you know what I'm saying? A lot of grandmothers are crucial in the upbringing of a lot of collegiate athletes, a lot of football players at that. So just think, you know what I'm saying? You get an offer, it may not even be in the millions, you know what I'm saying? It could be in the thousands, doesn't even have to be six figures, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, what do you do in that situation? Should you, take this offer or should you finish your education? And I think that a lot of athletes struggle with that. But now, today, I think people are starting to really understand, athletes in general, how much education is important. And a lot of them do go back to school now. You know what I'm saying? Like Shaq, for example, went back and got his degree at Barret University. And we're supposed to call him Dr. O'Neal. Okay, we're supposed to call him that. And respectively, he earned that. And he knew that was something he needed to do after, he played a successful NBA career. But now I would say the generation after Shaquille O'Neal, right? Let's say, for example, a lot of the athletes, even former athletes, are creating their own podcasts, right? Podcasts all across the board. They're on Spotify, they're on Apple, they're on all platforms. You know what I'm saying? But a podcast is not for everybody, okay? Because some of the content is not, I don't know, it doesn't resonate with all demographics. And it's difficult to be a content creator. But at the same time, you don't have to just be, creating your own podcast. You could be a social media influencer. There are other things that you could do, as far as letting people in. If you wanted to go into that podcasting space, that's still a part of media. You know what I'm saying? Um, and when you become like a social media influencer, that's also considered media, right? Not corporate media, but it's still social media. And so, say if you wanted to create your own LLC, I think athletes need to do that as well. Look into creating your own LLC. You know, all of the brainstorming that you do when you're just having those conversations with friends or while you're out having drinks, socially drinking, you could put that into fruition. Like you don't have to just talk about it, be about it. You can make that an LLC. And I think, now a lot of athletes understand what it is as far as themselves as being a brand, right? A lot of athletes are watching Deion Sanders right now, seeing how he's working the branding and the marketing and the overall appearance of who you are as an athlete. Now, he's already had his successful career as an athlete, but what is he doing now? Coaching. That's another option for athletes who don't make it to the NFL. It's difficult to be a successful coach, right? Because you're trying to match up to the societal norm of what's successful coaching, but it's really just about the impact, if you ask me.
And it's this message is for athletes of all
Yeah,
sports, really, because
yeah.
gymnastics is a very, very short-lived sport,
Hmm.
shorter than football. And Olivia Dunn, the LSU gymnastics sensation, she once said that her whole platform with NIL is showing people that there is life outside of your sport and after your sport. That
Hmm.
you don't have to worry about necessarily being like a bear in the root and just drying up. Once you cross that stage, you're not a student athlete anymore. But life continues, and I think she has shown a phenomenal job in being that example and letting men and women know that you can still very well hit it big after sports and even while you are in college, because I mean, if I grew up in the whole NIL landscape, only God knows how different life would be.
Right.
um, you Unfortunately, get that opportunity, but it's okay, because seeing how this younger generation is using their platform, is using social media like TikTok,
Yes.
and monetizing off it. It's showing us in reality, and I hate to say it, but it's showing us that success isn't one route, and some people go to college, some people finish their college degree, some people don't. But I think, especially with this NIL landscape, we're learning that entrepreneurship can be for everyone. And entrepreneurship looks different for everyone. It doesn't look the same.
Hmm.
So not be an entrepreneur in the same way that your friend is, but you can still very well be successful in your endeavors. So
Hmm.
it's so crazy, what this whole sports world, how the whole sports world is evolving, but nonetheless it is evolving, and it's evolving in a way that is unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're really serious about a broadcasting career, right? Because some people don't want to be on TV, right? Some people don't like the cameras and all that. But for example, Tim Tebow, okay? Tim Tebow, everybody thought Tim Tebow was going to be like this huge NFL star and like quarterback. And no, that's not what happened. His career was short lived and he tapped into broadcasting. You know what I'm saying? And that worked out for him. It also worked out for Brady Quinn. Okay, Notre Dame, Brady Quinn, you know what I'm saying? He admits his career was not what he thought it was going to be. But now, what is he doing? Broadcasting, commentating, correspondence. I mean, the list goes on. You know what I'm saying? If you put yourself in that position, if you put yourself in the position to be open minded and to receive, soak up everything that you could possibly learn and tap into, like, you know what, maybe I can do this. And it's never too late to start. You should never think about how long it's taking. Remember, they were talking about that football player, I don't know if it was Colorado State, but the kicker, he's like 33 years old or something like that, or he's in his 30s. I mean, listen, I get it. I get it. Okay. But college is that time where you're supposed to figure out what you're passionate about, what you really want to do. We don't know what he's truly passionate about. You know what I'm saying? Realistically, what if he doesn't make it in the NFL? He wants something to fall back on. So if he's staying in school longer to further his education, then let him do that. You know what I'm saying? But he doesn't have to explain that to us, but yes, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You can always go back and get your education because it's definitely key for if you don't actually make it in the NFL. I mean, of course, you can make it to the NFL because you're getting drafted. You're there on draft night, you get drafted, they call your name, the signing deal, you meet everybody, the adrenaline rush, you're thinking about the money, the life changing, everything. That's all there. But to have a successful career in the NFL is different than just getting signed or getting drafted. You know what I'm saying? But hey, to some people, you still made it, and that's all that matters. You know what I'm saying? It really also comes down to like your inner goals and your self goals as a college athlete, right? What is making it to
And
you?
make and identifying it young. I
Yeah.
believe that's things that can help a lot of student athletes, which I do believe that will really help change the landscape. Even as I see Lexi Madden just tuned in, she was a phenomenal gymnast for Ohio State. Um,
Lexi.
things, but I think, just seeing that change, it's it's admirable, and because and I really try not to reflect so much on my time as a student athlete, because I understand how different it is today.
Mm-hmm.
But reflecting on my time is so important, to really express how different things have changed. I have a younger brother right now, who's in college,
Mm-hmm.
and being a student athlete then, it was literally all about championships,
Mm-hmm.
getting good grades,
Mm-hmm.
so you can not only make the team look good, but you can hopefully graduate, once you leave out of here. But today, it's vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe vastly different because of the NIL
It
landscape. Now,
is.
student athletes are learning how to be businessmen and women in a way that we didn't learn before.
Yeah.
And it all came, ushered in through the NIL.
Yeah.
So, it's just it's crazy how things are changing. It's crazy how now even women are starting to be on the forefront of sports and sports media,
Mm-hmm.
and we all sports have for a very long time been dominated by men,
Mm-hmm.
but women are really breaking the barriers, and I think we've even seen that in the WNBA with the
Yeah.
WNBA, and
Yeah.
with the latest championship. The
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas, the game 4 had over 800,000 viewers, and it peaked at, if I'm not mistaken, at 1.3 million viewers.
Yep.
Just about last year, barely making it over 500,000. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
the landscape have changed, and I believe that it really changed with the help of college basketball
Oh
and
yeah.
these college athletes, because if we're being honest, we all know the WNBA has never picked up, and comparable to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But now, especially with college stars like Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark,
Mm-hmm.
Paige Becker, she's back. But Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, those ladies really did put women basketball on the map in a way that in previous years it hasn't been.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with that being said, it's and this year, knowing how many college women basketball stars are going to be on the court this season, it's going to be huge, and I think it's going to help propel the WNBA as well.
It is. Like you said, game 4, um, Las Vegas Aces versus New York Liberty, 889,000 viewers, right? Peaked at 1.3 million views. The Aces are now back-to-back champions, okay? And Aja Wilson was MVP of the game. You know what I'm saying? Las Vegas Aces, they're now the first, the first franchise in the WNBA to be repeat champs in over 20 years. 20
Yeah.
years. So just lets you know, like, the progress and how quickly, not an overnight success, obviously, it took time, but it's there. The viewership has increased by 36%. 36%. And that averaged 728,000 viewers. And that's huge. I mean, we see the support that they're getting from celebrities are showing up to the game. You know what I'm saying? Stephen A. Smith, Spike Lee. There's a bunch of people, a bunch of, not just Hollywood celebrities, but musicians, artists. And so when you see that, not only does that shift the focus to the game, you know what I'm saying? It's not taken away from the game, but it's motivating to watch the game. Okay, well, let me see what the hype is really about. You know what I'm saying? And so I really think that, like you mentioned, Angel Reese, right? Well, okay, the latest news is that not only is Shaq the president of Reebok basketball, like, to me, that I was like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And then to have Allen Iverson as vice president, that's even more exciting. And it just lets these younger basketball players know that no matter how long it takes, you can get there. Okay. Not only that, I don't think a lot of people know how talented and how smart, um, not just how smart, but as far as business, like Allen Iverson is. You know what I'm saying? There's always been a stigma attached to him in a way when it comes to the NBA and things of that nature. So now that he is a vice president for Reebok basketball. That's a big thing. And what did they do? They made a move that's historical, a move that needed to be made a long time ago, even though Angel Reese is just not coming out. They made it a point to make her their first NIL deal, right? Sign her to Reebok basketball. They have that control, they have that momentum, and that's what you're supposed to do when you're in these positions now. When you're in these type of positions, you can make moves like that. So you should be motivated to get to these types of positions, just in case you don't have a successful NBA career. I mean, they did, but you can still do it outside of that. We're getting so much clout, and there's so many platforms now celebrating the Black excellence behind the NBA, behind the teams in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? So there is enough of us in these positions to make these types of moves. You know, Angel Reese, she's just the beginning. And for Shaq to, to give her props and call her the GOAT, I mean, what more could you ask for? I mean, it's like she's in her prime. He's also an LSU alum. I mean, it goes hand in hand. So why wouldn't he do that if he's in the position to do that? You gotta love Shaq because he really does give back no matter what. You know what I'm saying? He gives back to random people, just living day-to-day lives who aren't even celebrities or anything like that. He's always giving back. So he's a really good example of somebody who of what these athletes should become when they get in these high positions, because sometimes you can be in these positions, right? Say if I hate to say it, but like when we had our Black president at Ohio State, right, people used to call him a puppet. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh, well, you don't automatically have to start thinking that, but that's how a lot of people see it. You know what I'm saying? But Shaq is Shaq. Let's just say that. They did that, and it's something that we have to celebrate and continue to talk about, because right now, well, we're going to be talking about that on the next episode, but with the NFL pushing back the dates for interviewing the coaches and stuff like that on a unanimous vote, there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. So I know we were talking about, the NFL players, what can they do when they don't make it? We forgot to mention that they can play in a different league. The XFL and CFL, the merger, right? Okay, that's an option. Why is that an option? For example, Colin Kaepernick. He's never going back to the NFL. We know that. We've accepted that. He hasn't accepted that, but we have. We understand. We understand how it works, and we understand why. But in this situation, this is a prime example of how, if you're passionate about playing football, right, you just want the chance to play, you would go play in a different league. I understand with him, if it's not about the money, it just makes you start to question things. Is it about the money? Because these other leagues don't make as much in the NFL.
I don't know. I think there's just I think there might be a certain stigma, honestly, because it's sometimes it's not necessarily about the money per se, but honestly the image, because when you look at guys who play NBA versus those who play overseas, you have a group of players who would argue that overseas ball is much more difficult than the NBA.
Yeah.
And then you have those in the NBA who agree that they're world champions. When they beat when they face each other in national competition. So
yeah,
have both sides of the argument, but I think especially with the XFL and the CFL over the NFL, I'm not saying that either has a greater repertoire of players, because I do believe that both or all leagues, have extremely talented players. I will say that, but I think in terms of guys playing in the XFL
mm-hmm.
and the CFL, I do
Mm-hmm.
believe is the stigma that is a league where second class players kind of play. Those who aren't good enough to go. So I think that might be what Colin Kaepernick is facing. I think the simple fact that people are saying, you're not of NFL caliber anymore, so go try this league. I think that's the narrative that he might be struggling with. But that's something that as a former athlete I can, somewhat see and understand that you never want to be forced, you know, in a way to
Mm-hmm.
kind of be put to a standard that you know is below what you're capable of doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that even goes, you know, with for a lot of example, you know, that can be, you know, when a high school kid, you know, was told by a coach, you know, you're not good enough to go D1, so go D2. You know, you're not good enough for this league, but you can somewhat last and survive in this league, so go try that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be what Colin Kaepernick is facing. But no, I mean, I wasn't even aware of the whole XFL and CFL merging. But I do think that's interesting. I'm excited to see that. And I think that football will be changing soon. For
Yeah.
those that know, I mean, flag football is an international sport, but it's gonna become a huge sport nationally within the U.S. because it will be added in the Olympics pretty soon.
Yeah, let's get
Um,
into that.
I
Like,
I
this is
don't
gonna
know.
be, it's a game changer.
I still can't fathom. Um, you know, I still can't fathom grown people playing flag football. You know, I don't mean it
Yeah.
in a disrespectful way, but it's still like to see to see, you know, flag football being as competitive as the NFL. I think that is still kind of blowing my mind. And again, I mean no disrespect to any athletes out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I cannot fathom, you know, flag football being such a huge sport. But I see a comment from Lexi. She says, "What's your opinion on creating a league for all levels of play instead of the elite nature of the NFL?" I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what the XFL and the CFL is doing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they're merging, kind of, you know, bringing all of their talent together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sean, shout out to I gotta shout him out. He actually very recently was inducted into the Ohio State Hall of Fame. Uh,
Okay, congratulations.
he was a phenomenal. He was a phenomenal gymnast that had represented the United States across the world. So
But
Sean Melton, he is a legend in the sport, and he's an icon. And
what? Shout out to Sean. Congratulations, Sean.
but what do you think about that though? Just creating a football league for all the elite. You know, not necessarily dividing, but having one big league.
I think, having one big league, I think that would be ideal. I think that it would basically change a lot of things as far as, the pay, right? Because that's what a lot of players are always focused on, right? The money, right? And so when you decide to do that, those are things that you have to take into account because um, you also have sports betting. That's going to play a role in that too.
Um,
And, I think that having it depends on who you have behind this league, the type of league like that. I think somebody like Dwayne, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, I think he's a good person to be in this position during the merger because I think that he's had that experience as an athlete himself. You know what I'm saying? And, he didn't necessarily have a huge NFL career. I believe he just played in college for the Hurricanes. But I think that he can, looking on the outside in, he sees how it is for the younger generation now, how some of them are the trading, right? The trading, how that works in the NFL. I think if you made it one big league, it would be difficult. I think it's ideal, but I think it would be very difficult. So I think just merging the CFL and the XFL, the other leagues outside of the NFL, I think that's what's going to help lead to something like that. Um, if we go ahead and the merger is successful, but I think having them together it wouldn't work. Not right now. I think that's something that'll possibly happen in the future, but let's see because like you said, like flag football is now going to be one of the 5 new sports added to the 2028 Olympic Games, right? And so there's flag football, there's cricket, squash, lacrosse, baseball, and softball. Now, I was telling you that like cricket, which is interesting in that because I was like, why don't we have a lot of black athletes minorities playing cricket, right? And it's because, one, that's really like an English
Yeah,
sport. That's big in
I don't
England.
I don't even know any Americans who know how to play cricket. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
I
Like,
did play
um,
fairly, but I don't know
yeah.
anyone
And
playing.
it's, but the thing with that is too, cricket is an expensive sport, believe it or not. It's expensive, but its history is known in South Africa. Now, in South Africa, it's a lot of black people, right? Predominant. It's a lot of black people, but the history says, there's a difference. Like with South Africans and Afrikaans, there's a lot of differences there, and it's tricky. So history says that more blacks there play soccer, like American soccer, um, than cricket, and it does have to do with the pricing of the sport and whatnot. So cricket is also a sport that's considered to have a lot of racism, and it's not just against black people either. Uh, there was recent news, like according to Sky News, it was like over 4,000 people provided evidence to like an independent commission board for the sport of cricket called Equity and Cricket Investigators. They basically reported that more than 80% of the respondents experienced discrimination, who had a Asian heritage. So Asians are discriminated against in the sport of cricket. Now they're considered a minority in that sport, and it's just a sport that's not really privy to other nationalities. It's like just a
How do you think? And it's so these editions of these sports is interesting. I've even heard that cheerleading and breakdancing will be added later on as
yeah.
well. But how do you
Hmm.
think that these sports, because we do live in America, so obviously our news is very,
Hmm.
um, it's nationally based. But how
Yeah.
do you think these sports we do internationally or on the international level, how do you think the viewership would be?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. Visibility for cricket is not there. That's another thing. Same thing with squash. Squash, I mean, according to the research I did, 1.4 million people in the U.S. play squash.
It's a,
Okay, where? I
like the
know.
like you hit against the wall.
Yeah, it's something.
It's a,
It is something on the court, and it is very it's
yeah,
impact.
gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So it is an impact sport, but it's really again a sport in England. That's like England is number one. They're known for squash and cricket and like that. But when it comes to lacrosse, flag football, baseball, and softball, those are sports in America that are big enough. Okay, platforms. So when it comes to this is interesting, right? I don't know how many people know this. Jim NFL Hall of Famer, legend, icon. He also played lacrosse, played them both at the same time. And so he is, basically a, a, a really good example of who a lot of black lacrosse players look up to, actually. It is Jim Brown. There is a Drew G to mention an article. Was, that was the first black lacrosse player he ever saw, was Jim Brown. And the thing is this, he Jim Brown was doing this to basically be representation in that sport, right? He was doing that for a reason. And the thing is this, with lacrosse, there's always been a history of socioeconomic barriers and racial inequality, things like that. That's why there's that lack of diversity there. But Jim Brown changed that. And there's actually an organization that solely works on diversifying lacrosse. So I did some research and I found out that lacrosse is actually, that came from the Native Americans. And it was taken. by the white people, unfortunately. But another black professional lacrosse player named Chaz Woodson, he is the director from Nation United, which is an elite level lacrosse program that focuses on diversifying the sport. And so he's constantly working on this till today, right? This space, this organization allows for more young, you know, black or minority children athletes to basically come there and learn about the sport, right? This gives them access to the resources they need because lacrosse can be expensive too, right? When I think of lacrosse, I think about like a private school that is predominantly white and they have maybe a couple lacrosse players on the team. That's what I've always seen. And so when you have organizations like, Nation United, that's what they need. And so to add lacrosse to the Olympics, I think it's going to be good for the younger kids, to see that you can play lacrosse too. There is a black lacrosse player out there. There is some history there. We did make strides there. And then the same thing with baseball and softball. Okay, we know about Deion Sanders playing
You
baseball.
know, well, used to be base baseball was a very familiar sport in the black community.
It was.
When my parents were growing up, and when my grandfather was young, of course that changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
Which we know why.
Mm-hmm.
It was always a very rich black sport in a
Mm-hmm.
sense of um, there might not have been as many black people playing baseball as maybe basketball, but there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot more black people in baseball than there was in swimming, gymnastics,
Mm-hmm.
and other sports that we don't traditionally play.
Mm-hmm.
Popular, so to I think that with it being in the Olympics, it will help. I think I think it would be good for a lot of young kids just to see that representation on a larger scale. Same
Yeah.
with um, I don't think the average person in society knows about like the lacrosse world championships or any professional lacrosse players because it's not something that in the U.S. national news is highlighted in the media and come
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to like basketball, football players, track stars.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think with lacrosse being on the Olympic platform,
Mm-hmm.
I think it will kind of open up that door for representation for younger lacrosse players and athletes, to see people who look like them on that larger scale. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm not too familiar with lacrosse, but God forbid that it is an expensive sport like gymnastics or swimming.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly the biggest thing that kind of keeps minorities out of playing the sport. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the inner cities, you have basketball courts, in every corner.
Right.
You have, but you don't have swimming pools. You don't.
And we have boxing.
You
We have boxing in the inner city neighborhoods. Yeah.
but you don't have ice rinks.
Right.
So you don't have gymnastics gyms.
Mm-hmm.
And when you gymnastics gyms, and swimming pools, they're in the suburbs or a little further away from where minorities may live. The majority of minorities in the city may live.
Right.
So I
Right.
think huge factor and representation in sports. A lot of these sports are expensive, and while there are a number of programs, that does introduce young children to these sports, I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest is the children actually staying in the sports.
Mm-hmm.
Juice and they kind of get in. What kind of helps them stay, and I think that's one of the bigger problems.
Yeah. And it's crazy because that was true. Baseball. It was like the Major League of Baseball league was basically 18% made up of 18% of black people. Had 18% black players in the baseball league, and so that was in 1991. And now it's only at 6.2%,
Exactly.
and that's 10% less than last year. So it's like dropping. in a way.
You
You know what
think,
I'm saying?
even when you think of the Negro League and how that kind of dispersed, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything strategic throughout the years, and it isn't, it's not by mistake that, the percentage of Black people today is what it is versus what it used to, back in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, everything is strategic, because we've always been in the sport, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It was
Yeah. I just think
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think that it's time for us to step out of the traditional sports that we normally play, right? Football, basketball, track and field. We need to step out of those sports. Those are not the only sports that we can be successful in. I think. I truly think so. And I mean, we're proving that right now, especially women's softball. And I hate to say it, but some people associate like softball. Back in the day, softball was not just played by women; it was also men who played softball.
Right.
And but now it's like it's just been centralized. Like when you associate softball, it's just automatically associated with women, but men could play it too. I just think that they've forgotten that. That's not really taught to the younger generation. It is, but that's not like something that's resonating with them. But as far as women's baseball, so somebody who the first professional softball player in 1951 was Betty Chapman. She's the first Black professional softball player. And then from 2014 to 2019, according to the NCAA, only 5% of collegiate softball players were Black. So there still needs to be some work in that area and representation, but it is there. Some prominent names I'll throw out is Natasha Watley. She's the first Black player to appear in the Olympics with the USA softball team. Kiki Stokes, Kelsey Stewart, Michelle Moultrie. These women are women today who are still acknowledging that there's a lot of backhanded racism in softball that still exists, and they're experiencing it this year. They're still experiencing it. So there's still a lot of work there, right? But what I do love is the attention that women are getting in softball, right? They're winning, and a lot of Black women at that. One girl in particular is Aaliyah Andrews, LSU alum. LSU just has some really talented athletes. I mean, I can't deny, but she's a center fielder, and she's known for her diving catches. They call her Air Aaliyah. You know what I'm saying? And she's gonna be on that women's softball team in the Olympics. I just know she's gonna make the USA women's softball team. It's there. And I'm sorry, but when you watch these games, you get into it. You know what I'm saying? It may not be your typical sport that you watch, but it's something that you get into because I'm cheering her on because she's in that space, right? That's how I feel that a lot of people in today's sports world, they need to change their way of thinking, um, yeah, put your kids in other sports where they can shine as well because they will shine, especially if they're the only one. You know what I'm saying? Um, so Aaliyah Andrews is one. And then recently the MLB held their fifth All-Star Classic, and it's the Jenny Finch Classic, All-Star Classic, named after her. She's an Olympian um, for the U.S., but this year they actually had a team called Tony's Promise that, composed of majority um, Black softball players. But not only that, they were the top softball players in the country in high school, and they won that classic. So adding softball, baseball, flag football, I see a lot of coaches, um, some football coaches who have coached like little league sports or high school football. Some of them are actually coaching flag football for the women's team now too. I see a lot of that. So I see a lot of girls tapping into that, which is still not your traditional sport, if you ask me. I think flag football is one of those sports where it's more universal and it could include a lot more people than just your regular macho weight room bodybuilding football player. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, we have women's tackle football, but I think that the Olympics adding these sports is going to definitely show that the representation is there and that it needs to be there and that we can get there. Because I don't know if you noticed that I've seen a lot more communities um, create spaces to teach students how to golf. Not just students, but younger Black kids in inner cities. There's a lot of spaces now where they're getting funding for teaching them how to play golf. And I want to say, like, look at Steph Curry. I'm not saying that it wasn't there back in the day. Of course, like somebody like Michael Jordan, he's been playing golf for as long as he's been Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Being invited to play golf and things of that nature. You've been exposed to it. But to actually practice and learn to take on the sport, to learn it, to make it, to compete in it, that's different. And so we've seen a lot of that happening with like Steph Curry and, random people, Dwayne Wade, stepping into that light. And I think that's another sport where we'll see it expanding more for Black people. I mean, of course we have Tiger Woods, but there's only one Tiger Woods. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when it comes to expanding the sports, I think they added some good sports. I think we have a little bit of ways to go with the cricket. Okay. I mean, people are still trying to understand, like, what the hell is pickleball?
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, do you have any interest in that?
No, but that's okay.
Right. I mean, I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna tap into it. I think it's something that I think pickleball is something to actually participate in than something to just watch on TV. It's not one of those you could watch on TV type of sport. You probably need to be participating in the sport, playing it, or being there at the event. But I don't think that it's a sport that we're gonna really be embracing in the Black community. I mean, hey, you never know. They may make it like something fun to do in middle school or something.
I think the pickleball will be a lot more accessible though,
It,
and I think a lot of sports, it's
to your
like
point.
it's much more easier for people of color, to be successful in those sports because they're easily accessible. Look at high schools. Just about every high school has a basketball team, but
Mm-hmm.
not every high school has softball teams or even baseball teams.
Mm-hmm.
Or sports that you find, at private schools, at a lot of his schools, schools in the suburbs, so, but I think pickleball is starting to become a little bit more accessible. I mean, I do know that
Yeah.
there's a pickleball course in New York, that you can just go play,
Really?
yes. So I do think that it actually might pick up a lot more, quicker,
Then cricket.
and it has. Oh, definitely than cricket.
Right.
I, I don't think cricket will ever be a household American sport at all.
I don't either. I mean, I don't think so either. So it's gonna be interesting to see, the Olympics when they involve when we see the cricket. Um, I think, naturally we tend to see like who do they have as Black on the team? We tend we might be surprised. We don't know who we're gonna see out there, but I just think that it's going to be very good for people. I think for the younger generation to see. So people who are currently in college, you know what I'm saying? People who are currently in middle school, athletes in middle school, high school, college. Um, if they've ever taken interest in a sport, they should be able to bring it to their school's attention or whoever athletic director's attention. Say, hey, we should probably tap into this. With all the resources and everything accessible to student athletes, I think that speaking up and realizing what you're passionate about is going to go a long way, especially when it comes to playing certain sports. I think not just not pushing your kids to play other traditional sports, but I think that at least experiencing one would be good. You know what I'm saying? Because to say that you've done that, like fencing, fencing is an expensive sport as well. And, Coach Anthony told me that it's expensive, and that's why you don't see many Black people doing it. Normally somebody is taking you up under their wing, or you've got some type of scholarship, or, you're in a space where that sport is encouraged. You know what I'm saying? But all it takes is one person. All it takes is one person to have the courage to step up and say, you know what, I'll be the first to do it. That's all it takes. It may not be that easy, but it's the thought that counts, the seed that you plant and acting on it and nurturing it. I think that's what counts. But um, that was it for today's episode. I mean, I think that was awesome because we touched on topics that, you know, we're not, they're not talking about it in the sense that we are. You know what I'm saying? I think that is definitely overlooked when it comes to understanding what to do if you don't make it in the NFL, and the options that are out there, the importance of education and staying in school, not just leaving like right away. There's a lot of football players at Ohio State. I mean, a lot of them actually were taking on a lot more academic wise than you would think one can handle. Some of them were double majors, some of them majoring in engineering, business, and those things are not hard. I mean, not easy to major in if you're a collegiate athlete. But either way, for those that didn't make it in the NFL, or those that weren't successful in the NFL, or not having the chance to play in the NFL because of an injury, I mean, you have to know how to bounce back. And one good example I want to end with is Ryan Shazier. Ryan Shazier is a great example because, his injury was unexpected. He had no control over that. You know what I'm saying? But he's a great football player still, and is still acknowledged as a football player, even though he's not active and, not able to play. But it's the way that he bounced back. It's how he was able to tap into something else inside of him that he's passionate about. He's still involved in football, but he's also doing other things outside of that. And I've seen Ryan down here in South Florida at his alma mater, as high school. He's interactive with the team, he's interactive with the coaches, and those are things that matter at the end of the day. You want people to remember you and your impact and what you did in the game, even if you didn't play. You know what I'm saying? Some people are stuck in their glory days. That's all they have. But then some people aren't. They go want to do other things. So it's important just to understand that just because you don't make it in the NFL, there's other ways to be successful. You know what I'm saying? And then when it comes to women's sports, if you haven't been supporting women's sports, I suggest you go do it in some shape, way, or form. And I can even say that's even turning on the game for 15 minutes, at least, giving them that viewership because they're getting it right now, and it's amazing. It's amazing. You can't deny it. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 6 of Off the Field. So, we're going to be here again on Monday, actually, on Monday, as we normally are. And we're going to be talking about why the NFL unanimously voted to push back the time frame to interview head coaches. We know that recently there's a lawsuit in there with the NFL, racial discrimination. A lot of it has to do with hiring practices and how they treat head coaches and things of that nature. So we're going to be getting into that deeply on Monday. And we're going to be talking about the 4 other sports that they added to the Paris 2024 games that we can expect to see. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like our page on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, and make sure you hit that bell so you're notified when the next episode comes on, or any new content that we have. And you can follow Paris on all his platforms too. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good evening. Bye.